arrangements on last Thursday because of a rather miserable day weather-wise. So today has been the day that was chosen at that time to be the alternate. And I thank you all for adjusting your schedules so that you could fit in the adjusted schedule that we were forced to do. This is an exciting day for us because we are actually, this will be the final meeting of the ADAPT Council as an annual meeting. As you're probably all aware now, as of the end of March of 2014, the ADAPT Council no longer exists in the structure that was in place. The federal government, in their decision, decided to discontinue the program for reasons that have not been totally understood by all of us, because we would be rather biased. We took great pride in attempting to deliver a program to our customers out there who were from the agricultural medium and who were in need of some dollars to get pilot projects underway. New things, new ways, new directions is what we're looking at. I want to say a welcome to Keith Kennedy, who's here today, because what we're going to say is going to all be recorded. It's what they call a live stream or a live feed. This will be going into the hands of Pat Martell over here at CBC, and if indeed they ever need something that would be appropriate to refer to that will be taking place today here at this meeting, then it's a piece of audio and video that they can bring up. So any of you who are on the program, just be aware of that. It's not something to be scared of at all. It's just that we are stepping forward into new means of communication. So welcome, Keith. Thank you for being here to do this for us. We're working much closely with the CBC on this one here. And as Phil will talk a little bit later on about where this farm center is moving, and with the concept of the legacy garden and the possibility of food shows being put together. And I want to draw your attention to a number of projects, people who are here showing you what their respective organization is offering to you. So please take some time and move around either during coffee breaks or certainly during lunch break, and have an opportunity to have a conversation. We've got them here, they're dealing with a lot of items. We only had one, I believe, who, because of health reasons, the soil food web, the compost tea, the biochar field trials, that gentleman has notified us on the weekend that he was not able to be with us because of some health problems. But I certainly want to extend a very warm welcome to all of you. I want you to feel very relaxed today. We've got some wonderful speakers who are going to share with us some of their ideas and their concepts, some of their concerns too, are going to be shared with us, because we're on the threshold of a lot of new things happening. The council itself has not actually identified or nailed down the program that we're going to become involved in. We're still working at that. The organization has hired a individual to be an independent chair who is working with us and looking at a number of concepts. But all I can tell you is the attitude is not going to change. We have some resources at our disposal, and we certainly very much plan to continue on in the vein that we've gone in the past, in that we will want to have individuals submitting ideas and concepts, to us that we can review, and if indeed under the regulations that will be put in place, if we can make their life a little bit more easy, or we can attempt to allow them or improve their situation so they can reach their objective in this whole area of agriculture, that's where we will and where we want to be. So bearing that in mind, we don't see this as an end of an era, but we certainly do see it as a step off in another direction. That's not to say that agriculture is going to be lost, but agriculture is going to be first and foremost, and it'll be whatever is necessary to improve it. We know there's a lot of new things out there. We know that the agricultural medium here in Prince Edward Island is as innovative and looking at new concepts and anxious to do that as any other place in the world. As a matter of fact, it's been noted by those other than us on the council that Prince Edward Island is probably one of the very best places to run pilot projects, to see indeed what the possibility of success at the end of the day is. So enjoy your day. We have a nice lunch coming in this afternoon at lunchtime, and we have an interesting speaker that's going to share with us as our lunchtime speaker. So that concludes my opening remarks, and I turn it now over to Mike Delaney, who is going to chair the first division, the presentation from the family farms. Michael, please.
It's important that we make changes on the goal. First of all, thank you, Elmer. I thought I was chairing the next session, not this one. However, I'm more than happy to chair this one. I'm going to be chairing about 40 minutes worth of sessions. We have 3 family farmers here with us, consistent with the theme. And the first one on the list is Matt Dykerman. And so Matt, I don't have a bio. You're going to have to do your own bio. We did meet briefly, and I certainly know that I know your farm and welcome you to the podium to introduce this first presentation.
I'd like to thank you, Mike, for the introduction, and thank Phil and the rest of the ADAPT Council for the invitation to come here and share with you guys kind of the story about our family farm. So for those of you who don't know, my name is Matt Dykerman. I'm currently the manager of Red Soil Organics. It's a division of Brookfield Gardens, which is a long-standing family farm here on PEI. For those of you who might know my parents, Eddie Dykerman would be my father, and Janet Dykerman my mother. On the farm, we have my uncle Gerald and Eddie and my cousin Travis involved in the conventional production. And in the last 4 years or so, we've started out producing some organic vegetables, and that's sort of been my responsibility on the farm. So I think what I'll do is I'll just kind of walk you through sort of the history of how we came to where we are right now, and what some of the challenges have been along the way, and what some of the neat opportunities have been along the way in operating a family business. So last summer we had a family reunion, and of course a family reunion is one of the fun activities you always do is try and fill out a big family tree, and everyone kind of contributes to it. I guess looking back at that completed family tree, farming has run in our family for a very long time. So I'm going to start with I'm going to call them my Oma and Opa. For those of you who are Dutch or German even, you'll know that that's my Oma means grandmother, and Opa means grandfather. So excuse me if I confuse you. So my Oma and Opa, they immigrated to Prince Edward Island from Holland shortly after World War II. Like many other Dutch families, my Opa had a dream of owning his farm, but that just wasn't possible in Holland with the high prices of land and the concentration of agriculture in that country. So he had some friends and family on Prince Edward Island, and he married my Oma, and he set across the Atlantic Ocean for an adventure to try and learn how to farm in Prince Edward Island. He started out working for many other different farmers when he first landed in Canada. Obviously, farming vegetables in Holland is very different from farming vegetables in Prince Edward Island. So he used that time as an experience to learn about the different modes of production in Prince Edward Island and some of the different conditions and the challenges of growing vegetables. Eventually, he purchased a farm in Cherry Valley, PEI, very close to where Hayden's would be right now. There's actually a road named after him, Dykerman Road. If you travel down route down the Trans-Canada towards Cherry Valley, you see Dykerman Road. It's a nice little farmstead right next to the shore. And so that's where my dad and my uncle and his family grew up and spent most of their childhood was on that farm. Due to reasons really out of his control, he ended up losing that farm. There was some financial difficulties with that, and as many people today on PEI have experienced, he couldn't keep his farm. But he's a pretty resilient man, and so several years later, he purchased another farm called Simpson Produce. It was actually, I'm sure many of you here know Bev Simpson from Bessie Seeds. He had a farm at the time and was looking to divest of that and focus more on the seed business. So my Opa, along with Eddie and Gerald, they purchased what was then called Simpson Produce. They moved that business out to Brookfield, PEI, where they are now today. So the three of them together, they grew that business substantially, and they saw a lot of changes along the way. Some changes that they oversaw was a really big shift in the mode of crop production. Synthetic fertilizers were being introduced, crop protectant agents, chemicals were becoming more mainstream in production. So they really adjusted their production to suit these new techniques and new technologies that were becoming available on the marketplace. Another large change that they oversaw in the last 20 or 30 years is the consolidation of markets. I don't know, even my memory isn't that great, but there used to be very many more grocery stores than there are today. Today we see maybe 4 or 5 large retailers controlling the entire wholesale vegetable grocery market in Canada. When they started out, there was certainly a lot more players in the game. So today there's a lot fewer customers than when they started out. They also oversaw I would say the commencement and the revitalization of the PEI Vegetable Growers Co-op. Eddie and Gerald are heavily involved with that co-op that exists on Sherwood Road. They started out with a very large membership, but the membership dwindled down, and as the membership sort of reduced, the business started to improve, and they've been able to access some overseas markets because of the economies of scale that cooperative has provided them with. About maybe 6 or 7 years ago, Eddie happened to be in a meeting with the produce category manager of Sobeys on sort of an unrelated topic, and the discussion of organic production came up. And this is where we started to hear from our customers that organic production is on their minds, and organic production is going to be the next thing that they were looking for. And there was really nobody in Atlantic Canada doing it on a scale large enough to meet the meet the requirements of these large distribution centers that Atlantic Grocers have set up. So Eddie sort of saw an opportunity there to enter a new segment of the marketplace and a new spot for growth. And I guess that's sort of where I come in. 5 years ago we started a business called Red Soil Organics. It's a very quick and fast growing section of our business. We produce organic carrots, broccoli, cabbage, tuna, green and yellow beans. We're starting to get into some different grains. We're looking at just a variety of crops. And the growth of the business has been very fast and it's been very overwhelming at times. But together, working together, Eddie, Gerald, and I we've stuck it out together and we've made it work. Kind of one of the interesting things that we found in starting to produce organic vegetables is, my Opa, he'll often sort of survey the farm. We bought him a little golf cart so that he can get around on the farm quite easily. So he's always kind of supervising us and making sure we do things right. But he'll oftentimes tease me that what we're doing in the organic fields now is really not that much different than what he was doing 50 or 60 years ago when he started farming. And of course that's partly true. Part of that is true. It's we're using a lot of those old techniques that people like him have already pioneered and have already mastered. I would say in addition to that, we've also advanced our production techniques and refined quite a few of those techniques, maybe beyond what Opa and Oma, how they farmed. So family farming for us has some challenges and it has some really good rewards. For me personally, I think that we've had some times in our business where that people have needed to take leave of absence, whether it be for health reasons or for personal reasons. And it's nice to know that you have your family members backing you up when that happens. And it's nice to know that it's really your family that cares and understands the most when you run into those situations. At the same time, communication can sometimes be a challenge among family members. Sometimes things are sort of assumed that they're known, but they're not really spoken. Sometimes, just communication can be a tough one. As our business has grown to include organics, and even as the conventional business has grown, one thing that our family farm has had to do is to include more people in that circle than just our family. We have a staff of about 35 to 40 people during our high season. Many of those people come back year after year. We've had employees now who have been with us for 16, 17 years, and they work full-time with us, and those people have really become an essential part of our family business. And in many ways, they succeed and they also fail when the family business succeeds and fails. So our farm has we've sort of expanded our circle of trusted decision makers to include a lot of those longtime employees and other professionals as well. So that's kind of my story, I guess. I'd be welcome to take any questions if you guys have any questions.
Matt, I think we'll get all of you up on a panel at the end.
Okay.
Just to questions. and-
Sure.
yeah,
Sounds
yeah,
good.
great.
All right, well, thanks.
Is Rose or Dave at the end here? Okay.
Apparently not.
I guess our second group of panelists are not here. I suspect it's because of the change in scheduling that we had to go through, so we regret that, but we'll continue. And I want to certainly thank Matt for sharing the insights about their farm operation, and we're the family's the board of directors, and you got to cover all the various facets of the business, and your comments were well spoken from the heart. Our next speaker then is actually Danny McKinnon, representing himself and his wife Christine. I know both of them. Played hockey against Danny many years ago, and I know he lives in the beautiful part of eastern Prince Edward Island, and he informs me that his sons recently joined him in the family dairy farm, and Danny's going to talk about his challenges and opportunities in farming since he took over the farm about 25 years ago now, I guess. Is it, Danny? Perhaps more. I'll let you tell him just how long it is. Thanks, Danny.
I'm flying on my own today. This is National Engineering Month, and my wife Christine is up at the university telling all first-year science students they should do engineering degrees so they can all become dairy farmers. Thank you, Chairman Mike. Many friends in the audience today. It's nice to make all these acquaintances. And ladies and gentlemen, my name is Danny McKinnon, as Mike said, and our farm has just become a sixth-generation family farm in Prince Edward Island. My wife Christine and my son and I milk 70 purebred Holstein cows in Brooklyn, with all animals included. We have about 170 head looking for breakfast every morning. I want to open with a quote from my grandfather's obituary in January 24th, 1930. He died on the first day of January, first of the Depression. It was quite deep sadness and heartfelt sorrow that we chronicle the death at an early age of 42 years of Mr. Daniel D. McKinnon of Brooklyn, Lot 61. Mr. McKinnon was a highly respected farmer of this thriving and prosperous settlement. Every person who knew him respected him. That highly prosperous settlement of Brooklyn today has Sandy Ray Farms as the only operation with head office in Brooklyn. So that's how times have changed. That's how times have changed. Our farm was settled by my great-great-grandfather, Donald McKinnon, in 1859. He came here from Scotland, and Susan sitting there, and her great-great-grandfather's brother was his brother, and they both came to the community of Brooklyn in 1859. And of course, at that time, all the land along the estuaries and close to the shores was pretty well taken up. So he was forced to move inland, but at the same time settle a place that was much the same as Scotland. It was on the top of a big hill with a stream running down below, and much like home. Except my father used to say the only shelter we had from the west was the Point Prim Lighthouse. And Harvey Cairns is here. He can testify what the cation exchange capacity Flintstone gravel is. However, in 1930, I don't know much about first generations that were on that farm, except that I'm just at awe of what those people had done. had done, because I know what was on that farm in 1930 from pictures. I have notes, and I'm ad-libbing here, so it's going to get all mixed up. But anyway, in 1930, that farm was left in the hands of my grandmother, my great-grandmother, and my father, who was 8 years old. And it was considered a prosperous farm at the time, and that farm stayed in our family under those conditions through the Depression. And it was all a matter of teamwork and pulling together. My grandmother wasn't really, a deep-rooted farmer, but my great-grandmother was, and my father at the age of 8 years old, was pitching in, and the younger brothers. So Dad quit school when he was 14 years old, and began to farm. Oats was the biggest crop, and that's why these farms were so prosperous, is they were, you can grow oats and gravel. They were shipping oats to England to feed the war horses during First World War. So there was a lot of money made from that, and it was reinvested into, of course, in the 1920s was the start of the dairy industry and PEI, the little cheese factories and everything. So they reinvested that money into, my grandfather had a herd of purebred Ayrshires that kind of went to the wayside after he died. But my father took that farm over when he was 14 years old. He quit school, and his brother eventually grew up, and he built that place. Into a mixed farm. We had, even when I was younger myself, we had a flock of laying hens. We had beef cattle, hogs, and dairy cattle. And my father's claim to fame was seed potatoes. And God, he loved growing seed potatoes. And he really, was a forefather of the elite seed industry in PEI. We were involved in what you call the Florida test at that time, which was a predecessor to the elite seed farm, and we would take an odd at 200 potatoes in September. You like to remember all this, Elmer? Odd out of 200 potatoes in September. They were shipped to Florida, and they were grown, and they were robed in Florida, which means they passed through the rows and they picked out the barrel potatoes, and they're all numbered, and come back to Charlottetown. They were over here in a place called Birch Court. They were in a cooler there, and the numbers of potatoes that were infected with viruses were thrown out. And so perhaps 175, 180 potatoes would come back home in the spring, and they were planted into a seed plot, which was our next year's seed. And we used to have ladies plant potatoes for us when I was a kid, and they plant an acre a day, tuber unit. My mother could. And I was up to, when my father died, to a quarter of an acre a day. Might have made a half in a good day, but I was the only other person in that whole crew that was allowed to plant the seed plot. That was allowed to plant the seed plot. And Dad and I planted those 200 potatoes, and they were taken in and stored in a special place in our basement. And they were next year's seed. Okay, so much for notes. We also, Dad's brother lived with us, and he was on the farm. Between the farm, we also had a trucking business, a general trucking business, and that was very interesting. It was a general trucking business, and the truck had 3 to 4 sets of racks. And it was nothing as a kid to have to get up in the morning before school and change the racks, because Stanley had already been out on the road and hauled a load of pulp in the morning, and he needed to go to King Cor for a load of sugarcane concentrate for the feed mill. And after he got back from that, probably we took half the racks off, either in a load of car lime or perhaps it was an election year, and we had to go gravel some roads, which was very interesting. But anyway, As I say, we often changed the racks on that truck 3 times a day to, it was one truck and it was general trucking and we had to do it all. 1943, Dad married Rachel Carver, and she was a farmer and a housewife and a mother, and soon became a mother. Mom milked her last cow when she was 71 years old. Hope we can do that. And she wouldn't have done that either, only my sisters got cross at her for she had a bad bout of the flu and they forbid her to get back to the barn. And at 82, my sisters retired from school teaching at 55 years old, and she said, God, what are they retiring for? If I only was healthy enough to get back at that barn, she said, especially to help during silences. So she had farming in her guts, and good job she did, because disaster struck again in 1968. My dad dropped dead, leaving 5 of us still in school. My oldest sister had already was teaching school, and of us all, even with that, we've the whole family, we've either obtained university degrees or college diplomas. So it was my dad's priority. We were to go to school. Survival of my farm, even through my dad's generation, was all around joint ventures. We ran joint ventures with our neighbors. Our neighbors were our cousins, and we owned very little on our own. Everything was jointly owned, and you filled 3 farmers' barns with hay in the summertime, and in the fall of the year we filled 4 wood houses. There was 3 farms involved in the joint venture, and there was a neighbor that had TB and wasn't able to obtain his own wood, so we filled their wood house with wood in the fall of the year. I remember the year I was at PEI, I got home, I finished writing my exam at noon, 2 o'clock I was in the woods, and for my Christmas vacation we just sawed wood the whole 2 weeks. Played some hockey too, but we sawed wood. But anyway, I graduated from high school in 1968, and it was 1972. Dad died in 68. Graduated from high school in 1972. And luckily enough, that was just about the time that Alex Campbell introduced comprehensive development plan. And there was money available to develop family farms. And our farm was in the bad need of that influx of cash. Just from years of feeding 2 families, the investment went into feeding the families and not back into the farms. And it wasn't just our farm, it was generally the family farms across PEI. But it came in time because I was leaving home to go to university, and my mother and uncle needed to put water bowls in the barn because I wasn't going to be there to water the cows by hand anymore. Bought a snow blower and a bulk tank, because I wasn't going to be there to harness the horse to haul the milk to the road to meet the milk truck anymore. But it was timely, and it allowed me to leave the farm and to go to university. And 1977, I graduated from McGill University with a degree in engineering, and lo and behold, I had enough money in the bank to pay off my student loan when I finished. So to do that, I worked summers for the Department of Agriculture in the daytime, and cut and baled hay and fed cows at night. But there was always time for a game of fastball or 2 during the week. But anyway, we still kept farming. We turned it into a dairy farm in 1972 with that cash. Dad was the potato grower, and he was gone, and I was gone to school, and that was my dream, was to come back home from university and go back into the seed potato business. But I think the first 5 years I was home, Elmer can correct me if I'm wrong, I think the first 5 years I was home, the federal government bought potato warehouses and sprayed them with blue dye and fed them to the cows all 5 years. So it didn't make going into the potato business, very attractive. So I worked for the Department of Agriculture as an engineer for 5 years, got my pinch, and in 1982, the time had come where I had to fish cut bait. My uncle and mom weren't able to handle the farm anymore, and to stay at the engineering business, I really felt I had to go do a master's degree or I wasn't going to, be up to date in that business anymore. So I left my job and I went home and I started, constructed a new dairy barn, expanded the dairy barn, and went from there. At all the time, I still had my joint ventures, my cousins and neighbors. I think in 1983, the only piece of equipment that I owned on my own was the 2 tractors in the manure spreader. Everything else was joint ventures. 1985, Christine Gorman moved to PEI as an engineer. There is a God. There is a God, folks. And she joined me on the farm. She grew up in a house where Dad worked 8 to 5 Monday to Friday, and the commitment of dairy farming was a whole new scene to her. But at the same time, Christine was also the 5th generation of Irish immigrants from the 1850s to Kensington, PEI. So she was not totally oblivious to, and she had a degree in agriculture, so she wasn't totally oblivious to what was happening on the farm. But she joined me side by side. She has an off-farm job, always did, and that's her forte. But she took over was quick to take over my mother's milking stool, not to my mother's satisfaction by any stretch of the imagination. But she did, and drove tractors. We plowed on our honeymoon together with 2 big tractors, and she maintained her career off farm. And as our son grew up, she backed off from her chores in the barn, but never away from the operations of the farm. She is a real kingpin to what is happening at home when we sit at the kitchen table. She has had a career as a professional strategic planner, and the only thing that planning skills I had was I got up in the morning and I did as much work as I possibly could get done before it was time to go to the ranking evening, before I met Christine. So those planning skills has really been a help to keeping our firm going. The neighbors grew old, and a lot of the neighbors grew old, and a lot of the. I'm over my 10 minutes yet, Wendy? Anybody time?
Yeah.
Yeah, way over. So we'll get to the end here pretty quick. The neighbors grew old. There's a couple of things I do want to say. One of the most satisfying joint ventures I had was with a hog farmer. And he and I ran a land pool for 5 years. And that land pool allowed us a 10-year crop rotation. And it felt nice. We were doing things the way we thought things supposed to be done. And economics doesn't allow us to do that all the time. So last spring, as Mike said, my son has joined me on the farm. He's never wanted to do anything else. Never wanted to do anything else. He did his degree at NSAC in animal science. Our daughter today is in Brandon, Manitoba. She works for a company called Heartland Auctions, which auctions beef cows, and trying to find her path in life. And it's become more obvious every day that that path is going to have a firm on both sides of it. So anyway, that's a little story about our operation. Anyway, if there's any questions, we'll have a chance in the panel. Over to you, Mike.
historical overview of the last 150 years of island agriculture. Danny, I don't know if you know this, but I spent a fairly big part of my life in rural Prince Edward Island, and I know that Elmer MacDonald spent a fair bit of his early life in Kensington. And did you know that Louis Gorman, Christine's relative, I believe had the longest postal route in Prince Edward Island with horse and cart, horse and wagon? I think it was 22 miles. And the last time he drove the mail was in 1950. Did you know that?
Oh, yeah. Everybody in
Yeah.
22-mile radius of Kensington said Louis was the man.
Everybody knew Louis Gorman. So
Everybody knew Louis Gorman, yeah.
thank you very much, Danny. The next speaker for the morning, if he's here, is Alexander Beattie. Is Alexander here?
Yeah.
Alexander, it's nice to meet you. In Prince Edward Island, if they don't know you, they know about you. And I know that Neil Campbell has met you, and you know Neil with connections with Grain Elevator.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so he told me the whole story about you. So, but I'll let you introduce yourself and tell us all the good things.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So just click this thing, I guess, now?
Yeah, just spin the wheel.
So hello, everyone, and happy St. Patrick's Day, by the way, on this cold Monday morning. But anyway, so I'm not the best at the freestyle speech, so I've got my papers to read off of. So hello, everyone. Thanks for coming to the Acorn Annual Conference. It's my pleasure to speak to you today about our family farm and how we ended up on Prince Edward Island. My name is Alex Beattie, manager of Alpha Mills, and I work alongside my brother, who also works at the mill and is also owner and operator of Beattie Farms. We as a family realize the importance of the family farm for the environmental sustainability, community life, local economy, and for our overall health and wellness. So an overview of our farming history. My parents Raymond and my mom Margaret, who's here also, were both raised on family farms, as were their parents and grandparents. They were mixed farms producing dairy, beef, potatoes, and grains. I have an older sister and of course my brother Will. We were all born in Northern Ireland, and my father shared a farm with his two brothers. After a number of years, it was realized that this farm was not big enough to sustain 3 families, so we decided to purchase a farm in Scotland. There we grew malting barley, grains, potatoes, and raised beef. This farm consisted of light sandy soils, which required proper soil management in order to bring the soil back to its full growing potential. Land also needed to be rented in order to make it a viable unit. After roughly 10 years, the land was was purchased by a larger farming operation which we could not afford to purchase at the time. Renting land was becoming expensive and very difficult to find. So at that time, Canadian farms were being promoted in the early 90s, and a number of UK families had settled there. So it was decided, due to the difficulty of expanding the farm in Scotland, that we would purchase a dairy farm in Manitoba. The thought of huge acreages, massive farm machinery, and lots of sunshine made this all very appealing. The dairy gave us immediate and steady income, but unfortunately it became a steady output due to the numerous problems that existed on the farm prior to our purchase. After about 2.5 years, a friend suggested that wonderful Prince Edward Island would be a great place to work and live. So we did sell the dairy farm and moved to PEI in around 2000 to a new family farm. So this was a 180-acre farm with a tourist motel and B&B. We grew a variety of cash crops while also maintaining a number of animals for the tourism side of the farm. We were all very much involved in running this family farm, as unfortunately my father was soon diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. My father taught us so many things in farming and how important farmers are to us, including all the hard work it involves and the numerous jobs that come with being a farmer. My brother Will continued to farm and decided in 2004 to start the transition into organic. We had some land on PEI, or we had seen some land on PEI, as well as reading about land in various provinces and of course worldwide that's being overworked, overloaded with fertilizers and sprays, and no proper crop rotations being done, which were causing huge issues with soil management, soil erosion, and of course the overall soil health. So growing organic was definitely no easy task, and no other farmer on PEI had grown organic on such a large scale. We're around 1,300 acres or so now. He took it upon himself to continue to grow his organic farm, renting more land every year and making our father proud, who sadly did pass away in the fall of 2009. A large problem with which many farmers face is crop storage and drying, so it was decided to rent a mill in Heatherdale, which has over 750 ton of storage, cleaning facility, extra warehouse storage, and space for expansion if needed. I have always had a large concern for our environment and helped my brother to work land and harvest at the busiest times of the year. And so the mill was purchased in 2010, and we incorporated the business in 2011. At the mill, we continue to promote organic farming and send soybeans, buckwheat, barley, canola seed, and oils overseas to international markets and across Canada. We're continuing to expand the mill. Recently adding over 200 ton of storage, making repairs, and adding a new leg to speed up our loading and unloading times. We're continuing to purchase more from organic farmers, and others are working to transition more land into organic as they are looking for that premium price and they see the benefit all around. And that's just some of the oil and that we I was recently on a trip to Taiwan, as a number of us in here were. It's a fantastic eye-opener to show that many of the countries that have booming economic growth and immense populations are becoming a lot more concerned with food quality and food safety. So as their standard of living continues to improve, they are willing to pay the price for food that they feel is safer and better for them. This is a huge market with over 23 million people living in Taiwan and over 4.3 billion in the rest of Asia. Many of these countries are looking for top quality non-GMO products, and PEI, I feel, and a lot of us also, would be perfect to ban GMO and be able to get a premium price for our products when we can guarantee it to be non-GMO contaminated. Many countries around the world are in the process of banning or have banned GMO crops from being imported or for being grown, and basically because we know little of the long-term health effects. We need to get ahead of the game and be able to supply this future non-GMO market before the GMO crops continue to spread across our province and it is too late. I have been reading about the genetically modified fish eggs that are being grown on PEI and are shipped to Panama to be grown into full-size fish. This fish has been altered to grow twice as fast as regular fish, and the fact that it's not only being allowed on PEI, but that Aqua Bounty is seeking approval to sell this genetically modified fish in Canada, I believe is unthinkable. Aqua Bounty is also waiting on approval to sell in the United States. It is estimated that 80% of the food in our grocery stores is derived from GMO. And of course, like those foods, the fish, which would be the first genetically modified food animal in our stores, would not be labeled either, and we would not have the ability to know or understand what we are buying. So today we're still facing issues of trying to buy land and rent it wherever possible. There's a lot of investors and large companies purchasing it up quickly. We're all concerned for the family farm, which is disappearing, and if farmers can't get access to land which is continuing to increase in price and its availability to rent, then of course it is extremely difficult to continue to have the family farm. Sadly, the way of most things today is quantity over quality. We need to start caring more about what we're growing, taking care of our land for future generations, and showing government officials these issues now before it is too late. Being a farmer, in my eyes, is one of the most important jobs. We all depend on them. Basically, it's very disappointing how farmers are often not respected or appreciated for their extremely hard work and determination. I believe Prince Edward Island, even though we often hear how small in size it is, believe that we can make a big stand to show that quality is of great importance and not just quantity. I hope we can continue to see more young people get into farming while seeing more of our crops and products being exported to other countries. It is great to see that we're seeing more farmers markets and local produce on our store shelves, so that the public can purchase local products easier while also learning more about our Prince Edward Island farmers and how much they do for our health. And that's it. Thanks very much.
I guess I want to thank you for that thought-provoking, thought-provoking comments, and with that, invite the four panelists, the three panelists, I guess, the three presenters, to join me at the front of the room, and we have a few minutes for discussion, so if you'd like to come up. How much time do we have, Phil?
Time for a couple of questions.
So do you want them to come up?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, we'll put you right to work there. Are there any questions for our presenters?
Or any final comment? Yeah. Yeah.
Any parting comments?
What about discussing chief obstacles? to the current
Want to
system?
lay it out a little, Roger?
If there's no other questions, I don't want to hog the time, but what about discussing your current chief obstacle to continuing your farming operation? You know, whether it's financial or whatever it is.
Okay,
Mike,
so-
can you give him a microphone?
Yeah, either I give you the mic or you speak up loud, one or the other, but the question is, Phil, you can handle it, Mike. There's three perspectives, I guess, on obstacles. We have, maybe you could make a comment on obstacles on the GMO side. Maybe Danny could make a comment in terms of developing a dairy farm in the future in light of supply management and cuts and things, which he didn't talk about, but he could. And maybe you could talk a little bit about, maybe make a comment on the organic vegetable, organic market side with retailers. Just give a
Okay,
couple minutes each.
Yeah, I guess basically with the GMO side of things, I know that we've been expanding markets, and some markets allow a little bit of GMO contamination, basically because it's so widespread now. It's getting very difficult to basically guarantee something GMO free. We do have certain markets that are demanding it to be GMO free, which is getting next to impossible. Even buying seed and those kinds of things now, it's basically impossible to guarantee it GMO free now. So we're having huge issues basically by sending things out. We can't guarantee it to be GMO free, and that is causing some issues with organic. I know there's other countries